There are some maintenance things that make a really big difference. They'll make your bike ride better, they'll make it last longer. Today I'm gonna do a pretty serious overhaul of this bike. New cables, brake bleed, lower service, new tires.
Hi team, I'm Sid.
And I'm Macky.
For the past 6 years, we've been racing mountain bikes professionally.
And living out of our van.
On this channel, we're sharing those adventures with you.
All of them.
So hit subscribe and join the team. Hey.
This app called Pro Bike something or other, and it connects with Strava and tells you all of like distance and time and stuff you've done on your bike. So I've ridden 34 hours on the Jet and 230 miles. I could probably go longer, but like some of it has been kind of rough riding. Like I rode it in the snow, I've ridden it in the mud. The Jet is ready for an overhaul, so that's the plan for today.
This app is pretty cool. We can see that Macky did 600 miles on the road bike so far this year. Your hours are higher on the Jet than the other bikes, but I think that's because of all the like Sedona riding you did on the Jet.
Yeah, it's a lot slower speed. And like the Rocket, like what, I think my mileage on the Rocket was
is higher, but like way less hours, because that's like more XC trails or something.
This is the bike that I put the most time on, except maybe the road bike. But road bikes don't need maintenance nearly as often.
I realize we're saying that, but like the last road bike video we did was like point. You doing that.
That's a good point. I was wearing fenders though.
He had fenders, it was fine. Jack just leapt onto this table that's like 7 times his height with like no problem whatsoever. Not bad for an old boy. You're really performing today. Ooh. Oh, did that hurt?
Like,
ooh, now is he concussed? What is this thing?
Can you guess?
It's a valve core remover, but it's so cute.
I know, isn't it great?
Yeah. It's not the same as the one that we had.
Well, yeah, that's also upside down.
Choosing tires.
All right, I'm thinking Agaro on the front again. That's what I
Yeah, the Agaros are awesome.
It's a great tire. And then I'm thinking Barzo on the back. A little bit lighter than double Agaros and roll a little bit better. So that thing's got, it's like a safety tip, so it's a rubber tip and it's got a hole and it basically just lets air in super duper fast. So you have to take the valve out to be able to blow it straight into the valve core, or the valve stem rather.
And then you just, really? This is how you've been doing it? Oh.
Whoa!
Wow,
all right.
That was a lot of pops. Okay, that was real easy.
Air compressors are awesome.
We would take these out even without the air compressor because
yeah, if we were doing the trick,
it just allows more air to go in.
Yeah, if we were doing the trick with the floor pump like in this video, which we'll link to in the corner, you also want to take it out because it just allows air to go in more quickly, which is important.
We've been getting a lot of questions about like, when are you gonna start racing again? Blah, blah, blah. We are also wondering that.
Wish we knew.
Wish we knew. I'm still injured. I have not been able to start training again yet. I know we haven't talked about that much on the channel. Really appreciate if you guys just respect my privacy on that, not ask a ton of questions, because it's pretty complicated. I have done more updates for people on Patreon. Because of that, and also because of just all this uncertainty over whether races will actually run or not, we have kind of made the decision to stay in Taos at least through August. And Macky has some projects, which we're not gonna reveal yet, but like really fun personal challenges and projects that he's working on. So he's been training a ton, and that's just sort of easier because it's easier for me to do my physical therapy and stuff here. And like I said, like we're hearing about a lot of races and then a lot of them are sometimes getting canceled last minute, like things are popping up, disappearing. Everything is changing. We definitely have races on the schedule for September and October, but only time will tell whether those events actually happen.
Really, I've just been training really hard, and you know, we haven't had a ton of videos on riding recently, but frankly, training is not that interesting. Like, we're gonna make it as interesting as we can and share when we can, but you guys don't want to see me doing like a lot of long road miles, and that's what I've been doing a certain amount. But my Taos Ski Valley KOM that I attempted recently, I hit my highest ever recorded 20-minute power. I rode 332 for 20 minutes. So Mike is stoked. I'm stoked. So obviously the training has been working, but it's just not the most interesting thing ever. So trying to figure out, like, we aren't racing, but what kind of like fun challenges can I do, can I work on that gives me something to train for and also provides fun content. So we're working on that and we're doing our best, and we are totally open to suggestions. If you think I should do, I don't know, 100-miler just to see if I can or something, like,
you
tell us
definitely
in the
can. A 300-miler is probably more of a challenge.
I'm open to suggestions. So if you have ideas, throw them in the comments. We'll definitely read those.
Hashtag challenge Macky.
Hashtag challenge Macky. That's good, yeah.
So doing a lever bleed on Shimano brakes is super straightforward, super easy. If I can do it, literally anyone can do it. And it is often all you need to do when your brakes are a little squishy. Like, sometimes you do need to run a full bleed through the whole line, but you can get away with just doing a lever bleed like 80% of the time.
The concept is that you just need the levers to be level and above the calipers because you want the air bubbles to come up. But I don't know why the levers need a I'm just gonna put subtitles under that.
There's a
Dead bug in this.
just don't get it in the brake line. That would be really bad. Yeah, that's good.
No dead bug. He stays in there. It's so nice to have all the Allen keys like just somewhere where they're easy to find though.
I know.
All right, so you pull this thing out, bolt.
And then you
Talk about that.
find the washer and bolt that just fell on the ground.
But first, we'll do our lever bleed. Screw this guy on. Like, this is literally so easy, unless you drop your thing everywhere. Woo! Okay, you pull that out. That's the hardest part. Oh, I got a good bubble. Here, we're getting great bubbles. Watch.
See if it'll focus. Okay. Oh yeah.
So obviously this needed that.
Yeah, it did.
So then you just pump your brake for a while till you get bored of doing that and there's no more bubbles coming out. No more bubbles are coming out.
Brake feels real solid.
Yeah, so if you do this and it's like black gunk coming out, like you probably were due to like flush the whole line and put new fluid in, right? Is that a good, like,
exactly. And we have a video of Sid doing her first ever brake bleed, which we will link to up in the corner. The bolt's right there, but the washer, the rubber O-ring, I think fell off underneath. I think it fell off over here. Yeah, I think it fell off closer over here, Sid.
You see it? Are you just taunting me? Okay.
No, I'm not just taunting.
I thought I heard something over here, but that was probably the bolt.
Oh, wait. Oh, look at where it is.
Are you kidding?
The
Literally
leg.
wouldn't have found that in a million and 10 years. Come here. Okay, alright. We're professionals.
Note to self, don't lose the O.
That's how you do a lever bleed.
Next thing we're gonna do is just check the brake pads. I am fairly certain they do not need replacing because I have not put that many miles on this bike, but if you're doing all this anyway, you have your wheels off, it's definitely worth checking the brake pads, so let's take a look at them. All right, so they're dirty, but that's just normal. What you want to check for is that there's plenty of pad left here, and a good way to measure, put this spring back in and make sure that there's plenty of pad beyond the spring. If it's ever anywhere close to the spring, you're going to be riding and then it's going to wear out and it's going to wear through the spring and then bad things are going to happen. So these look fine. Yeah, I'm going to spray them down. I'm not even going to sand them, but I'll just spray them with some brake cleaner and then wipe them down. All right, front brakes also look fine. Plenty of meat on them. I'll just wipe them off also. Here's a little trick that we highly recommend to everybody. See those blue marks right there? That's paint pen. And what I do is I mark my brakes when I'm happy with where they are So then if I crash and they get bumped, or if we're doing work and we have to rotate them, I can always get them back to exactly the right spot really easily. Same thing on my dropper post for the height. And on my saddle, you can see on the bottom there. So this is sort of the basic maintenance routine that we do on our bicycles. We generally go by the mantra of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but there are some maintenance things that make a really big difference. They'll make your bike ride better, they'll make it last longer. This is the sort of check we'll do before races. We won't necessarily do all the same work because a lot of time we don't need to, it just hasn't been enough time. But this is kind of the basic maintenance things that I think make a huge difference in how your bike rides and feels. It doesn't take that long to do. It's maybe a couple hours. Do it once every 3 months, 6 months, depending on how much you ride and how many different bikes you're riding. Next thing I'm gonna work on is shifter cable and housing. And a lot of people will be like, oh, my shifting feels terrible. That really is like the easiest fix. A lot of time you do not need a new chain or a new derailleur or a new shifter or anything like that. You just need to replace the cable and housing, and it's really cheap and it doesn't take that much time. You don't really need that special of tools, so it's totally worth doing. That's what I'm gonna do real quick, get this bike shifting feeling good. When you're doing this kind of maintenance, it's always worth checking your chain and chain rings and cassette. I haven't put that many miles on this bike, so it really is looking pretty good. None of the teeth look super deep or like weirdly shark fin. So cassette looks good. Chain ring also looks good. I'm gonna use this chain checker, and it's really easy to use. You just drop this backside in and then see if this side goes in or not. And if it falls in, it's worn. And if it doesn't, then it's good. So I can force it in, but it takes force to do that. So if you just drop it on there, nope, looks good, chain's not worn. One thing that's great is that a lot of bikes nowadays are going to continuous housing. So basically from the shifter all the way to the derailleur is a continuous piece of housing. And I really like that because it decreases the amount of stuff, junk that can get to your cable. Like the only part of the cable that's exposed is like the very little tiny bit at the very end. That tends to make cables last a lot longer. You don't have to replace them as often. But when you do replace them, you have to use more housing. One tip, after you've pulled off your cable and housing, use the existing piece of housing to measure your new piece of housing, and then you don't have to measure it, which is really nice. I gotta say, having all of this organized and being able to just like pull out housing when I need it is pretty awesome. Yes, it is. All right, we'll measure it against the old piece. Another thing you learn after changing lots of cables and housing is that it's not necessarily the cable that is stretched out that's causing all your problems. So if you're like, oh, I'll just replace the cable and save the money on the housing, don't do that. It will end up biting you. You will end up having to replace both of them again later, because what happens is the inside liner of the housing gets worn out by the cable rubbing back and forth on it. So it's actually more space in the housing also. So just replace both of them. You will be glad you did. I have to give a shout out to one of our patrons, Tony. He made us these, and it's a cable end crimper. He took pliers and filed down the tops or machined down the tips so that they make a nice little crimping thing. So I'm pretty excited to try these out. Crimp. Oh yeah, those are awesome. Thanks, Tony. Just see how the shifting is. I get unstable. I have taken a shock apart once. I don't generally.
Did you get it back together?
Yes. I don't generally take shocks apart. My understanding is they don't need as regular service, and it's a much easier thing for a service department to do. So
we are slightly spoiled.
Yes.
We are spoiled in that we can send our suspension to Fox and they service it. But we're not going to do that for a simple lower service.
A lower service is pretty straightforward, really. What you're doing is replacing the oil that lubricates the shafts, the stanchions in your fork. And basically the oil hangs out down here, and over time it evaporates, gets dirty, gets gunk in it, whatever. And when it does, it makes your fork feel terrible.
Oh yeah. So we've got an oil pan here, very important.
I have to say, this is a tool I'm very excited about that I've never had before. It literally has one use. You screw it on this, and then you get a rubber mallet.
Oop, and there goes your fork oil. That scared me. So if you want step-by-step instructions on how to do a lower service on a Fox 34, we'll put a link to the instructions from the Fox people who know what they're doing better than us. And you should definitely click on that link instead of leaving a comment complaining about how we didn't show enough details.
Everything looked really good, like the oil wasn't even that
Wasn't that bad,
dark,
yeah.
which is sort of what I figured, but checking our seals here, like they look fine, so.
This is the part where you would put in new seals.
Yeah, and honestly, we didn't often put in new seals, but we'd usually do new O-rings. And if you look at the O-rings, like,
Oh, like here.
that's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And they look a little dry, but they look fairly clean, really. Excuse me. You always want to run your brake line on the inside of your fork because that protects it from rocks. Go buy something, it can scratch it or puncture it. Run it on the inside, then it's got a little bit extra protection. Well, my jet is looking pretty darn dialed. I did a lower service, brake lever bleed, check the brake pads, replace cables and housing, put new tires on. I suspect it's gonna feel pretty darn amazing. So I'm gonna go ride it now. I have to say, working in the shed with the new design was amazing. It was so much fun. It made this process a lot more enjoyable. Being able to just grab what tool I wanted, grab what parts I needed. Everything was like there, accessible and labeled, and it was just awesome. It was so nice. So if you haven't checked out the video of our shed redesign, we'll put a card to that right there. I'm gonna go ride my bike. See you guys over at that video in just a second. And in the meantime, don't forget to be more awesome.